Hey, I got an announcement. I got one announcement tonight. That's all. Unless I think of another one. September 15th, we'll have another men's M6 in August, second Monday of August. And then September 15th, listen to this, it's not a Monday night, it's a Sunday night. We were going to do a Saturday night, but the barn was being used for the whole month, so we decided, well, let's do a Sunday night. So September 15th is Sunday night, and it is for the couples M6. So we do it one time a year. How many have been to that? Been to the couples M6? Quite a few of you. That's a chance, and you can come as a single too, but it's for, we call it couples. And that's an opportunity to bring your wives out, because if you've been coming out here for a year or 2 or 3 or as many as 8, because that's how long we've been out here, thank you to Sheriff Family, it's a chance for them to come out and see, what M6 is all about. And what will happen up here on the stage is really not any different, except it will be a testimony from a couple. It'll be a man and a woman up here sharing their marriage testimony. And I can tell you it's going to be really, really good. But that's September 15th. Now, it is, for those of you that don't know, we have one fundraiser a year. That's all. I just have to say this too whenever I say anything about, raising money within influencers. We don't have staff. There's no salaries. There's just, the overhead that we have is putting on the meals and a post office box that we pay for. And then we give money away. Whatever's left at the end of the year, we give it out to just different good charities and things like that, if we have anything left over. But what we also do is we split the proceeds of this couple's M6 with 17 Strong, which is the Sheriff Family, their foundation for learning. So the money is put to good use, and all the way around, there's nothing wasted at all. And you can go on tonight when you get home. Those of you on our mailing list, and we're updating that as we go, but you can go on our website, influencerscentralcoast.org, and you can buy your ticket you can either buy a table of 10, and invite the guests that you want. That's $1,000 for a table of 10, or you can buy a ticket for you and your wife. That's $150 for 2. And then $75 if you want to come by yourself or as a single. And so that's the cost. It's on the website. You can go on there, and there's a little thing on it. It's pretty easy. You just click on there, put in your credit card, and then you show up on the 15th. So we'll announce, you'll get an email on it, maybe more than one, maybe a couple, and we'll announce it again next month. But the space is limited, so don't wait too long, because it'll sell out. So if you want to bring your wife and listen to a story, or you want to bring another couple with you, or you want to buy a table and bring some friends, it'll be quite the evening. So that's the only announcement I have for tonight. Obviously, the journey groups, the reason why we're here, they're still open, they're still ongoing. You can go on that same website and see any day of the week where you can, all the way from Paso Robles to Santa Barbara, where you can get in a group of men. And the only reason influencers exist is to point men and women to Jesus. And to show them, I read this morning. Funny how when you read the Bible, you read it it says something different to you. But I was reading Philippians this morning, and Paul was saying in chapter 1 towards the end how really his only goal, and I'm paraphrasing, his only goal in life, and this is while he was in prison, was to make Christ attractive. I'd never heard it put that way before. I've always wondered how to say that. You know, we can all say point men to Jesus, and that's good. But to make Christ attractive. Because in so many, I don't know, been around, you know, it can be not presented, the gospel can be presented as not very attractive. Of course, most of the time when it's tied to legalism and rules and box checking. But if you can make Jesus attractive through grace, and what he does in our lives and is able to do, and what he has done, and what he's going to do, that's pretty attractive. It's a lot more attractive than telling somebody how to live their life and pointing their finger at them all the time. I hate that. But Paul even says in the same chapter that, you know, I think he called them false teachers or whatever, I don't know. He says, but you know what, it don't matter. They're doing it for their own good. Their motive is just to kind of take advantage of the religious thing and everything. He says, but you know what, I don't even care anymore because at least they're preaching the gospel. I don't care. I'm in prison. I just want to make Christ attractive. And I think we can all agree he did. He did. So, we got the honor tonight of a guy that's going to come up here and he's going to make Christ attractive. I promise you that. He's a local boy. He came from Texas about 8 years ago, and I was introduced to him a couple months ago and heard his story, and it's awesome. It's such a story of redemption in his marriage, and he's going to share about all that. But he was a CPA actually in Dallas. That's kind of he's a numbers guy, right? And but he came out here 8 years ago and partnered with his brother-in-law, I believe it is, and into the restaurant business, and I'm sure some of you, if not most of you, have been in his restaurants, but I just learned this tonight. I know the names of the restaurants and everything, but it's Heritage Restaurant Group, and they've got restaurants up and down the coast. And so that's kind of who he is and what he does. We all want to know who a guy is and what he does, right? So I just wanted to fill you in on that. And Chip Anderson, he's our speaker tonight. I'm going to invite him up here, and he's going to tell us the story.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Man, I feel like I've had so many guys pray with me. I feel like I go play in the Super Bowl right now. Awesome. God is in the room here, and I'm just blessed. And Don, you introduced me to Jim, and Jim, you asked me to give my testimony, and it's just, you know, guys, I'm in awe. You know, I started coming here in March, and I haven't missed one yet. You know, God is in the room. God is in this place, and I'm very excited to have my dad here from Fort Worth, Texas, and I didn't line it up that way. It just happened to be. You know, Jim said, "What month do you want to do?" I said, "July." And it just happens to be that he's here, and I'm just, it's a blessing to have you here. And just so many friends, and thank you all for the prayers. And you know, I was thinking too, when I picked July, I wasn't thinking about this, but July 8th, 2012, I was doing much worse off than I'm doing tonight. I was actually sitting in a jail cell in Collin County, Texas, having ran a red light, totaled my truck, totaled the person that I hit, sent him to the hospital. And that was the last drink I took. Was July 8th, 2012. And from that, and since then, my life has changed. My life has changed, and it's only by God's power and His redemption that I'm even here. It's a miracle, honestly, because I should be dead or I should be locked up. But let me back up a little bit. So, I grew up in Texas. I was, I'm going to set my timer because I will. I don't want to do that to you guys. Sorry. So, I grew up in Texas, and I had a great family. My mom and dad. I had a sister that's 2 years older. I'm thankful that my brother-in-law is here, Greg Graber, tonight. And we had a great family. We went to church from a young age. My folks took us to church, and I just, from a young age, I didn't feel like I measured up. I felt like life did not spin right for me, And I was full of fear. I was full of fear of what you thought of me. I was afraid of everything, and so I had a little trouble making friends, When I was in middle school, I got fed up and I said, I'm just going to take off. So I had a horse named Brandy. I said, I think it'd be a good idea if I just took my horse and I ran away. And so I did, but that's it. I ran away. I took off down the side of the highway with a can of beans and no can opener. And I ended up in the middle, like 3 a.m., and here I was in a store with a can of beans and no can opener. And but that's the story of my life. Because, by the way, the same guy that I ran away with almost shot me in his bathroom with a .22. That's a different story. But so I had this fear, and I remember when I was in middle school too, I was invited to a Baptist church camp. And I can honestly say that I was moved by the Holy Spirit. And I actually walked up and I accepted Christ at that church camp. And that's as far as it went. Because what I found shortly thereafter was to soothe those feelings inside of me. I was in my friend Jeff's backyard. His mom wasn't there. And we started drinking beer in his backyard. And what I found was that instant gratification, alcohol is going to take away those feelings of insecurity and fear. And it did. Right? It did. And so that's what I ran to. And so every time I had an opportunity to change the way I felt, I took it, and it didn't matter what it was. And it led me down a dark path. By the time I was 19, I was in rehab for meth, and I was doing all that. I was stealing from my parents. I was selling everything I had, and ended up in rehab for meth, and I was inpatient, and they sent me off to Atlanta for 3 months, a sober living house, and I got straight off the meth, and I came back, and I went back to college, and I got my grades up, because I had accumulated, I had made a .9 in junior college. That's not good. So I had to get my grades up, so I had really studied hard, went to a 4-year college, and got my degree, got my CPA, and went to work for a big accounting firm in Dallas. And my life on the outside looked great. And I met my wife, Amber, my beautiful wife, my better half. And everything looked great on the outside, but I was missing something, and I was missing a relationship with God. And so we got involved in church. We were active church members. But I still drank alcoholically, right? I wasn't drinking at work, I wasn't drinking in the morning, I wasn't doing all those things, but I was consumed with drinking, and thinking about the next drink. And so we were church members, and my wife actually worked for the church, but I would show up, I was this, carnal Christian that would show up on Sunday mornings with bloodshot eyes, reeking of alcohol, and just going through the motions, as my wife was really the spiritual leader at home. And this continued for years, and it was a constant thought of, when am I going to get my next ring? When am I going to get my next ring? Because this is the thing, like, you can imagine having an open blister, right? I had an open blister inside of me. I had a hole inside of me, blistered all around it, right? And it was just a feeling of less than, feelings of fear, and alcohol soothed that, right? But what I learned is all of that. And I don't know, you guys, it could be alcohol, it could be whatever, but we all struggle with whatever. We all use whatever it takes to soothe that. Whether it's porn, or whether it's material goods, or whether it's whatever, we're looking to soothe that pain. And that's what worked for me. And so I continue to do that. And then when I turned 40, my life fell apart. I ended up in the hospital, and I had been a daily drinker since I left rehab, every day. And when I went to the hospital, when I turned 40, I almost died from a stomach infection that almost killed me, put me in ICU for 4 days, and then in the hospital for 2 weeks total. And I didn't have a lot of pain, but every time that nurse came around and said, "Hey, what's your pain level?" It's a 10, And then she was like, "Well, she'd hit me with morphine." I'm like, "Well, that's not strong enough. Do you have anything stronger?" And so it was Dilaudid. So I got out, and I ended up in the hospital another year later. When I got out that time, they sent me home with a bunch of, Narco, Percocet, or whatever, and I took those, within a few weeks, and I was just off the rails. And so at this point, my wife came to me and said, "You're either going to get help, or you're going to move out. I'm done with this," because I was just a train wreck. And our kids probably at this time were maybe 6 and 8 years old, and so I did. And I said, "I'm going to get help." So I went out, tried to get help. Let me take that back. I went through the motions to appear to my wife that I was trying to get help. But really I didn't want to quit drinking. And so over a 2-year period, things continued to get worse. And I ended up, just doing crazy things. I would disappear, for a weekend, and they wouldn't know where I was. This one weekend I disappeared. It was Sunday afternoon. I left. I used to travel a lot for business, and so I had Hilton points. There was Hilton hotels or affiliates like all over the Dallas area, and I just got this hotel room. And this is a selfishness, right? This is the selfishness that I was just displaying to my family. Is I would find this hotel, and I found this hotel, and actually the Mavericks were playing the 7th game of this championship, and I ended up in this hotel. I ended up going to a restaurant, watching the game, getting really loaded, and my parents said to my dad, my mom and dad, and actually they were in California. They canceled their trip to come back because they didn't know where I was. And so my dad was sitting on the sofa with my wife, and they were sitting there trying to find out where I've ended up. And I'm walking into this hotel room, and the phone rings. The lady behind the counter answers it. And right when they were calling, they were calling the same hotel. I was like walking through the doors and checking in. They're like, "Oh yeah, Chip's right here. He's checking in." And it was just crazy and honors of God, They found me at this hotel, and I ended up in rehab after that, and just crazy behavior, because I was off the rails, you know, and I needed something to happen. And about this time, I met a man who had been where I had been before, right? He was a man that knew God, and he helped me, right? He sat down and he talked to me about, hey, this is what your problem is, this is what you're dealing with. And this guy had what I've seen a lot of you guys have. He had joy, he had a sense of peace, he had serenity, and it was really contagious, you know, and I wanted that. So I started trying to, you know, I started meeting with this guy on a regular basis. The problem was I wasn't ready to quit, you know, and so I remember this one time I was having a swim party for my son who was playing basketball, and I was in Austin on a business trip, and I left there, and I started drinking. I had these periods of time where I had some sobriety, and then it would just go off the rails. You know, I was in Austin, I started drinking in Austin, I made it back to Dallas, and by the time I got to the swim party, I was hammered. I was supposed to be taking care of all these kids, you know, that were on my son's basketball team, and here I was drunk, and I had parents coming to pick up these boys at my house, you know. But this is what I had become. I had become all about me. It was selfish, you know, selfish behavior, and it was just craziness. And I remember the elder of our church sitting in the backyard and calling this other friend of mine that had been in recovery, and calling him and then talking on the phone, and him going to my truck and pouring out this bottle of vodka. And he took me, this is actually, so it's been kind of really bad. It's going to get better, I promise. So, but I just kind of want to give you a context, right, of kind of what I was dealing with, and just this crazy behavior. As I went to this, he said, you know what, you're going to go on this retreat. And so I remember riding in this car, going from Dallas to Oklahoma with this friend of mine named Mark. And Mark he talked the whole way, like 3 hours. He had so much energy, and he just talked about Jesus the whole time. And it was really wearing me out, because I was really hungover. And so we drive all the way up to, you know, middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, at this place. And I remember walking in, and one thing that I noticed, I was walking, you know, it's like kind of like one of those big motels where you walk down the hall, and there's rooms on each side. And I remember walking down the hall, and I'd see these men on their knees praying. You know, and I remember that struck me as, wow, you know, that's crazy. You know, all these guys are praying. And then I remember, this friend of mine asking me, well, what I want you to notice the guys around here that are like, that have a lot of joy, they're full of joy, and I want you to see if you can see what the parallel is, you know. So I did. That weekend I was very uncomfortable, and I was hungover, and I didn't want to be there, but I was watching these men, and the ones that had the most joy were the ones that were serving. You know, those were the guys that were putting out the chairs, those are the guys that were making the food, those were the guys that were actively doing something, you know, and it really struck me. And then I left there and was drunk shortly thereafter. But it stuck in my mind, you know, it stuck in my mind watching these guys. That weekend had a real impact on me. So fast forward, the weekend that I started off my talk with, you know, at this point, well, let me back up a little bit. I'd already been to a rehab, you know. In 2011, I went to rehab. My family, everybody, my kids, and sister, brother-in-law, they all went to Hawaii, and I went to rehab, you know. And so I'd been to rehab, that didn't work. So the weekend, I get into that weekend, and so at this point, You know, when I went to rehab that one time, my wife was very supportive. She's like, you know what, you got a problem. You know, you need some help. And so she was really behind me, right? But whenever I went to jail the second time, I didn't get that kind of support, right? She was done, you know. I mean, I had completely, at this point, destroyed our marriage. So I ended up in jail, and I remember sitting in that jail cell, and I was just destroyed. I was at my end. I really, it was rough, you know. And I remember there was a Bible in the jail cell, and I just turned to Psalm 23, and I just would read it over and over again. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. And He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. And just reading that over and over in that cell, and just telling myself, I'm going to do whatever it takes, right? I'm going to do whatever it takes. And but at this time, she wouldn't even come and visit me. You know, I remember my dad was like, you know, he really likes Diet Dr. Pepper. Should we put some money on his commissary so he can get Diet Dr. Pepper? And she's like, we're not going to give anything, you know. And so I was there for 7 days, and when I got out, I called a friend, Mike, who had been leading me along the way. I said, what do you want me to do? I'm willing to do whatever you tell me to do. He's like, you know what, we take this meeting to this jail. It's about an hour from your house one way, and you're going to go and be nothing more than a bad example, and don't talk unless I ask you to talk. And so I did. I went, you know, and I went. And here's the thing, guys, is that it didn't matter what he said. I mean, he could have sold me. He could have told me to go pick up manure for a full day, wherever. I would have done it because I was willing to do whatever it took. And so I did that. I did that commitment for 2 years. I would go. And, you know, the funny thing is, we'd drive up there, about 4 or 5 of us, and the whole way down, be complaining or moaning about work or whatever. By the time we got there and worked with some of those other guys that were struggling, we completely forgot about our problems. And we left there on cloud 9, you know, and just laughed the whole way back. But I started doing this, and I started to clean up the wreckage of my past, right? I started to get down to, why did I act the way that I acted? You know, why did I do the things that I did? And you know, at this point in time, I started to develop that relationship with Christ. That, you know, before I had, you know, I'd gone to church and I was religious, right? I could put myself in a religion box, but I hadn't really developed a relationship with Christ. And so I started, you know, and so part of that is turning my will and my life over to Christ, you know, and going through it and doing that, and it started to change my life. You know, I started to get down to the reason that why I acted the way that I acted, you know, and at this time I was living in a sober living house, and my wife didn't, you know, she was still disgusted with me, you know, and so I was just going home. I would go home to take care of, you know, help the kids with their homework, and mow the yard, and do those kind of things. But she didn't want to be part of me moving back. And so this was, you know, and I remember exactly where I was standing when I called her, and she said, you know what, I got the divorce already, because I just can't do it anymore, you know, and it was the worst day of my life. And but I kept going and doing what I was told to do, or what was suggested to me to be of service. And God started to change her heart. And by the grace of God, she said, hey, why don't you come back and move in, you know, And guys, that's just, it's a miracle, right? And so I was, it's just crazy how that all worked out. But I'm sorry, I'm trying to prevent myself from getting emotional, but I may do it anyway. But you know, we should be married. You know, a lot of the guys in here know my wife. You know, and it's just been an honor being part of a church where people have got to know my wife. And I shouldn't be married. It's by the grace of God that He restored that relationship. You know, and so, but He did. And here's the thing: my kids at the time. My son didn't want anything to do with me. You know, he was a mama's boy, and I had really destroyed that trust. But over time, God started to work on his heart, right? And my friend Ted Malley, you know, part of my journey, my friend Ted Malley says I'm the average of the 5 guys I hang around. Thank you for that, Ted. I use it all the time because it's true. And what I found was I surrounded myself with guys that build me up, right? They build me up. And I'm thankful for a lot of them are in this room right now. And I'm thankful for all of you guys. You know who you are. But I've been walking with, you know, and the other thing I can say is, you know, my brother-in-law Greg tells me he makes I have a spiritual purpose now, and my spiritual purpose is I can take my bags of crap and I can help other guys that have experienced the same thing I have, right? And he talks about the your purpose being the difference between a map, a compass, and a map, right? And if my purpose is my compass, I always know which direction I'm going, right? My spiritual purpose is to, one of my spiritual purposes is to help other guys that struggle with what I did. And if my map is, how am I doing that? How am I arranging my life to fulfill that purpose? And that's been amazing. I've had lots of opportunities to work with guys that have struggled. That is extremely, I feel like that's what God's put us here to do, is to work with other guys that are struggling. And so one of the things that have happened that I've seen is that my kids have been around recovery. My family's part of recovery. They see it. There's guys over at the house. We're doing recovery together, which has been an awesome experience. And I'm grateful for that. My son, the son that didn't, took a while to build that relationship. That's one thing too, is my kids. I don't know if my kids are going to have the same struggles that I do. I know some of my kids' friends are out here, and they might someday, right? But what I've seen is they've been around recovery, and right now, I don't see that they're doing those things. They're not really that interested in it. But I love to tell a story about Landon is my son, and he. There was one time that there was a guy that was drunk and slow, right? And I needed to go help him out. And one of the other guys that I work with, I couldn't get a hold of anybody. So I said, hey, bud, he's 18 at this time. I said, you're going to go with me, And so we hop in his truck, we drive it slow, and we're in this parking lot of this liquor store, and we find this guy, and we get him into my son's truck, and we're trying to find out where he lives, and we end up in this old house in Slow, and we barge in, we go into the house, we go upstairs, and there's, he's peed all over the bed, and so my son's helping me change the sheets, and And we get him some food, and we're walking out. The door breaks open. These two guys jump in, come into the house, and they're screaming at us to get out of the house. And my son's eyes are like this wide. And it turns out it's the guy's son. He's telling us to get, hey, you're not supposed to be in here. So it rolls out in the street or in the yard, and the guy picks up a trash can and throws it at his dad. The cops come, and we're leaving there. And my son goes, Dad, that was amazing. Because if you ever do that again, I want to go. He thought it was great. So, my kids, they've got to be around that, and it's been amazing. And I can't, I don't know, guys. I mean, it's, what I can tell you is this, You know what? I have got to immerse myself in Christ, right? I've got to immerse myself. So what do? I'm thankful that I got a bunch of guys. I got a bunch of guys that hold me accountable in this room. I go to, Bible study on Thursday morning, Grace Bible, 6:30 a.m. Wow, it's early. But I go, and I read always, even though it's early, I go. Sometimes I don't want to go, but I'm always glad I went. Some friends of mine get together. We do a Bible study on Tuesdays, and I love it. I go to several meetings with guys in recovery. I do those kind of things. I go to church on Sunday, and I have got, one of the things that I didn't have whenever I got sober is I didn't have a whole lot of discipline, right? I didn't have a whole lot of discipline. So now, right, through men like yourself that guided me, I get up in the morning, I get my coffee, I get my wife's coffee, I get in bed, I open the Bible, she opens the Bible. We study together. Right now, I'm in the Gospels. And I didn't have that before. And it's such a blessing to be able to do that with my wife, right? Guess what? We pray together. We pray together. I mean, I'm like, I never did that before. She prayed with me before I came here tonight. I mean, before I thought I didn't deserve that, And now it's just such a blessing. And the more what I find is the more that I seek God, the more I want to know, right? And the more I want to know, I want to dig deeper and I want to learn more. And it's just unbelievable, Yeah, talking to Jim about, he's like, hey, I said, Jim, you know what? These journey groups, they sound pretty cool. I may do one of those. He goes, oh, you will. I go, okay. And I probably will. I mean, it sounds amazing, and you guys are amazing. I mean, I can just tell. I mean, it's just the presence of God is in this place. So if you're kind of new to this process, or you have things that you struggle with, I love the story of Peter, right? He denies Christ 3 times. And when Jesus is resurrected, Jesus asked him 3 times, do you love me? Well, yeah, of course I love you. Do you love me? Of course I love you. Right? Feed my sheep. Right? Feed my sheep. And I think that's what God's calling us to do. Right? Is to feed the sheep, to be plugged in, and just be part of this deal. So, anyway, like I said, if you're new or you're trying to just find a place to get plugged in, I just trust. There's a lot of great, incredible guys and a lot of wisdom in this room, and or in your churches or wherever you go. I encourage you just to be a part of, right? Get hemmed into that. Because, you know what? If I would have done that, if I would have gone to that Baptist camp, or if I would have done it in the church my parents took me to, when I was, 15 years old, I would have saved so much heartache and damage that I did to my family. And God had me on a path for a reason, right? And I had to do what I had to do. But yeah, just get involved. How am I doing on time? 37 seconds left. But anyway, guys, hey, thank you for letting me share a testimony. It's a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you, Chip. It was really good. It reminds me of a story. Just a kid's story. It's very similar to my story, those of you that heard my story. Pace, I think it was, this is some time ago, but I don't think the numbers have changed. They did a study that when a child comes to Christ, that 5% of the family will come to Christ, will follow Christ. If the mama, the mother, comes to Christ and knows Christ, 20% of the family, or 20% chance, the family will follow Christ. If dad finds Christ and comes to Christ, 94% the family will follow Christ. So if you're sitting in here, I know lots of you, your families are following you, no doubt. But if you're sitting in here tonight and after hearing Chip's story, and when he was separated from his wife, and because of God's grace, she allowed him to come back in, and then he wanted to know Christ. He didn't want to know about him. He wanted to know him. And he did that through serving and through understanding grace. And that we don't have to measure up, because none of us measure up. I don't measure up. But he doesn't, that ain't what he measures. So if there's any of you in here tonight that are going through something similar, or maybe it's been a long time ago, but the main point is, if you're not think that you're being the spiritual leader of your home, and I don't mean you just following your wife to church every week. That ain't the same. But if you want to be the spiritual leader of your home, maybe you've never accepted Christ. You never surrendered. You never came to the end of yourself like Chip did in the jail cell, like I did, like I know a lot of you in here have. Maybe tonight's the night. Stand up if you want to give your life to Christ. If you want to surrender for real. Maybe you can't remember when you gave your life. You're not sure you did. I'm not going to ask you to bow your heads. Don't look around. I don't go for that either. Stand up like a man. You want to be a man? You want Christ to be attractive to your family, to your friends around you, to your influence? We all have those circles. If you just need prayer, or if you just want to learn about journey groups, stand up and come up to the front. Somebody will pray for you and answer your questions, if you'd like to take that opportunity tonight. Chip, thank you very much for sharing your story. Remember, we have another story from a man next month, M6, and then it's the couple's story. And a little preview, it's going to be Chip and his wife. So you're going to get to hear her side. You're going to get to hear Amber's side. And well, I don't know about sides, you know. There's no sides anymore. They're like this. But go on the website and get those tickets. It will sell out. We got some dessert for you in the back. If you'd like to grab some of that. If you help us stack the chairs, remember some of them have one spoke, and some of them got two spokes. So put the twos with the high, take them towards this side. Please don't stack them over here. Just get them over to this side if you would. We'll roll the tables up. So thank you very much for coming out.